Okay. I want to talk about pressure. I want to talk about immobilizing people through their hips or their head, immobilizing one or the other, which will wreck the ability to use the rest of the kinetic chain. So I think the best place to show this actually is in side control, and then we'll talk a little bit from mount and then from start pass. This is going to be all about pressure. So if you've ever tried to hold Russell in place, you know that his hips are very good at getting back into some kind of guard. He can do that because his spine is free. If, when I have side control, I think about reaching far enough to get like my hand under his armpit here. If you don't have really long arms, if all you're just getting is your middle finger in his armpit here, that's great. If now I can drive my shoulder into his face. Now look, when he tries to turn his hips into me, they can only go so far without his head, right? So I'm not even applying pressure in my chest yet. All I'm doing is making him look that direction. So there's also the thing here, like what's rude, what's not. I'm not trying to hurt his face. I'm trying to keep his face from moving towards me. If he drives his face into my shoulder and it's uncomfortable, that's kind of his choice, right? He needs to create some space first. If I'm just pushing on his face, that doesn't feel too bad until he turns into it, and then it's not so great. So he might just choose not to do that. So on top of that pressure, I want to now, I want to put my chest into him. So we've talked about this a lot where like if my chest is right on top of him, that's kind of heavy. If my chest is over him, he can move me. If my chest is down and through him, now it's quite powerful on this side of his rib cage. From here, rather than thinking about squeezing with my arms, I'm thinking about driving my chest down, right? Rather than pulling him up, I'm puffing my chest and making it big, and that pressure is much different. And, sorry, so much noise happening. From here, what I'm trying to do is make him only have bad options, right? His only way out at this point is to go away from me, which gives me turtle or quarters. From here, he can try and turn his hips towards me and get a leg back, but he just can't with his neck stuck like this. And I can start collecting arms and making my way to other positions, right? It's just the immobilization of the cervical spine makes it hard for him to use the rest of the spine. That's all it is. And then the real big problem or piece of my chest pressure is I want my ribs down or my sternum on this side of his chest, and I want to puff into him. Right? It's not about driving him towards me, it's about me going down onto him. So one more time, we're here, we get underneath the armpit, we drive the shoulder of justice, we drive down the hips, and then we move our chest through him, not on top of him, and then we should hide our head, because he will do mean things to your face. And from here, he's gonna have to make mistakes to get out of here. He might push on my face, which will give me an arm to start attacking. He might roll away from me, which will give me cradles and arm bars. What I see a lot of, and what I want to get rid of, is my hips level to my shoulders and no real connection up on the head. And when my hips are level to my shoulders, he's going to get back in very quickly. Even if I'm blocking this hip down here, if I'm not pushing his face, and if this leg or my hips are level to my shoulders, I'm not exerting a lot of pressure downward. But as soon as I drop my hips and puff my chest, we start messing up his breathing a little bit. We make it hard for him to move one direction or the other. This can be true too in mount. If I'm on top and all my weight's on my knees, now it's hard to exert my pressure. But if I can collect an arm, and I can make his head look that direction, and I get heavy, it's really hard for him to come towards me now because I've made him look into his own bicep, right? A lot of times we're here, we're like this, and maybe we smother him, but if his head is square, looking at me, his hips can move. Right? But if I move his face towards his arm, now when he tries to move, it's pretty limited mobility, and I start getting to collect some arms. So it's the same thing in both positions. My hips are down. Well, the other thing I didn't do was also puff my chest into them, which would add just another layer. We're in mount. Again, I don't want weight on my knees, and I want to start collecting an arm. The other thing I want to do is move his face towards his arm. I can do that with my hand. I can do that by just putting my head in his head and making him move that way. And now we puff the chest on top of that and drive the hips, and it's all terrible. Yeah. The only other place I really see pressure going kind of wrong is in a guard pass. So I just want to talk about this real quick. If I had like a double over, I got two ways of exerting the most pressure here. One is to get my hips way higher than my head and drive down into that shoulder. And the other is to sprawl and expand my chest into his legs here. And now it's really hard for him to move his knees. I see a lot of plank. And when I have a plank, yes, Russell and his legs make my life hard. As I go around in a plank position, he can grab something, and now I'm in trouble. If I go around really TP'd up, I can use this hand to move around. If I move around really low to the ground, he can't move his legs. So we're going to talk about all the places we can exert the most force forward and in with our chest and with our body. That's all.